They say the tribes of Florida vanished, but the land tells a different story. Ashes in the soil, drums in the wind, names erased from paper, but carved into trees. This isn't just a story about who left. It's a story about who refused to disappear, and how a swamp became the last battlefield for memory.
There was no bird song that morning. Only wind, thin and searching, weaving through the blackened trees. The air smelled of wet moss and old smoke. Not the kind that warms homes, the kind that ends them. An old man stood where the village used to be. Just pine needles now, and silence. He stepped carefully, as if afraid to wake something still sleeping under the soil. His boots crushed brittle fragments, a piece of shell, a torn braid of river grass, a child's carved turtle charm, half buried in the sand. They were here 3 days ago, he said. Now there's only ash. The government called them removals, but the forest knew better. There had been no notice, no negotiation, just rifles, orders, and wagons. They came before dawn, soldiers wrapped in wet canvas, boots slick with marsh mud. One carried a paper sealed with red wax. "This land is no longer yours," the translator told the chief. "You must relocate west of the river immediately." The chief didn't answer. He just looked at his daughter, then the trees, then the sky like it might intervene. "We were born in this dirt," he said quietly. "Our ancestors speak from beneath it." But the men with the rifles didn't hear spirits, they heard orders. The old man knelt by what had once been the fire circle. The stones were scattered as if kicked. "That was their cooking place," he murmured. "The women used to sing while they stirred the hominy." He reached down, brushing aside leaves to reveal a charred piece of clay pot, still warm from the sun. They didn't run 'cause they wanted to. They ran because they were hunted, not like criminals, like animals. The child beside him, no older than 9, stared at the ruins. Where did they go? Some into the swamps, others north, west, wherever the wind let 'em hide. Some never made it out. The soil held secrets the maps did not. A stomp dance flattened a brush here. A marriage happened by that oak. A baby's burial mound stood beneath the hanging moss, unmarked, untouched. But the new settlers didn't see those things. They cleared the land, burned what they didn't need, planted cane where prayers had been spoken. "The government says they vanished," the old man whispered. "But I was here. I watched them leave, and I remember their names, even if no one else will." He looked out over the empty clearing, where only the trees seemed to still listen. The earth remembers, even when the books forget.
The trail through the swamp. There's a part of Florida no map wants to admit. Not the sunny coastlines, but the wet, tangled heart. The swamps. That's where they went. The last of the tribes, the ones who wouldn't sign, wouldn't kneel, wouldn't vanish quietly. They followed the cypress and cattails deeper than most men dared to walk. Not to hide, to survive. A young mother moved slowly through the muck, holding her son above the water with one arm, Her other hand gripped a staff carved with turtle shells, each one a prayer from home. "We'll stop by the hollow tree," the elder said. "The one marked with 3 stones. That's where the others wait." Behind them, the men carried packs of dried cornmeal, bundles of fish jerky, and the stories of generations, passed in whispered songs so the soldiers wouldn't hear. They didn't have wagons. They had memories. Weeks passed. The rains came harder. The mosquitoes thickened like smoke, and still they walked. One night, as thunder rolled over the treetops, a boy asked his father, "Why can't we stay in one place?" The father didn't speak at first. Then he pointed to a moss-colored stump half swallowed by the swamp. He said, "Because they burned our home," he said, voice low, "and the fire still follows." The swamp offered no comfort, but it offered a choice: resist or be erased. Many tribes that refused to leave were hunted. Some were captured and chained, marched west along a path they never chose. Others died of sickness or hunger or heartbreak somewhere between the trees. They call it the Trail of Tears, the old man said later. But Florida had its own trail, drowned in swamp water and forgotten by textbooks. Even in the Everglades, even in the hammocks, they weren't safe. "One day," said a hidden village elder, "we'll speak our names again, out loud, without fear. But until then, let the trees hold our language. Let the wind carry our drums." These weren't just tribal disappearances. They were erasures, brutal, systematic, and silent. Florida's history wasn't made on paper. It was carved into tree bark, breathed into smoke, and buried under layers of forced silence. Vanished, but never gone. The years rolled on. Settlers came with deeds and fences. New towns rose where old villages had stood, places with names like Liberty and Prosperity, paved over bones. No one spoke of the people who had lived there before. In one of those towns, a school teacher read from a book. Florida was the wilderness, tamed by civilization. Children nodded. None of them knew that the soil beneath their classroom once held council fires, that the very hill the church stood on had been a burial mound, now leveled flat. And one night, a woman, older now, her face scarred with years of sun and sorrow, walked quietly along the edge of a canal. She wore a necklace made of river pearls. "They called us vanished," she whispered. "But I am still here. I remember every name they tried to forget." She crouched by the water and opened her hand. In it, a piece of red clay, smoothed by decades of touch. "This was my mother's," she said. "She hid it when the soldiers came. I found it when I was 10. She pressed it into the mud at the water's edge. Not to bury it, but to let the land remember. Far inland, in a pine grove shielded by wild citrus, the last drums still echoed. Not loud, but steady. A gathering took place once a year, unannounced, unrecorded. Elders told stories in languages outlawed by old policies. Children danced barefoot on ground that had once been taken, reclaimed now in memory. They tried to erase us from history, the storyteller said. But history isn't just in books. It's in our breath, our feet, our fight. And so the story of Florida's last tribes remains. Not in marble statues or dusty archives, but in every rustle of the palmetto, and every echo across the glades, and every quiet act of resistance. They were never truly gone, just made invisible. But the land never stopped seeing them.